So a couple of days ago, Piotnet released a new plugin called PiotnetGrid. Now this is a way of creating custom grid layouts and then inserting them into any kind of page design using Gutenberg, using page builders, using a shortcode. We can also add facets to this so we can filter, search, sort, and so much more. But is it any good? Well, how about you join me on my first look and take a walkthrough of some of the key features that this plugin includes. I'll also go through some of the things that I think need to be improved upon, and at the end I'll give you a round of my thoughts and feelings on whether it's worth investing your time, effort and hard-earned cash into grabbing this particular plugin. So this is what we're going to be taking a look at today. Let's take a look at what's on offer, the pricing and everything else that goes with it first of all, before we jump in and start taking a look at how all this works. So at the moment you can see there's a discount for 20% for early adopters. And also, if you already have any of the Piotnet products like PAFE or you have Piotnet forms, you can use the email address that you signed up with your account and you can get an additional 20% off. So pretty cool to see you can get those kinds of things. Let's take a look at the pricing side. Click on Get It Now and you can see there's our pricing structure. Now, I grabbed the lifetime deal using the discount code and also using the fact that I've already got an account with PAFE and Piotnet forms. So we come out about $79 for 100 sites lifetime. Now there has been a few people complaining about the fact that it's only 100 sites, but let's be brutally honest about it right now. That's pretty good going. If you've got more than 100 sites you want to use filtering on, I'm sure you can probably afford another $95 to get an additional lifetime license if you need it. Support the developers. It's always good. Gives them more incentive to create and support more products in the future. So what exactly do you get inside the Piotnet Grid Builder? Let's take a quick look at the key features. Now, if you've ever used anything like Grid Builder WP, this is going to feel fairly familiar. You're going to be getting pretty much the same set of tools. You've got the cards, which are basically just the designs for each of the entries, whether that's a product, whether it's a custom post type for a vehicle or something, or just an ordinary post. So if you've used Jet Engine and you've used the listings feature, or you've used Elementor Custom Skin, the concept of cards is going to be very familiar to you. And that's basically what this is allowing us to do. If we scroll down, you can also see there's a couple of examples here. So we can see we've got this mosaic effect. We can take a look at a blog post listing, and you can see we've got posts on the left-hand side. We've got smaller post entries on the right-hand side. You can filter these down using what are called facets, just basically that, filters. So you can see we can filter these down to the various different types of content. You've got a carousel option and you've got a scrolling option. So plenty of different options there should you want to use any of these to start off with. And then we've got the filtering side of things. And filtering, they basically call a single filter is called a facet, whether that's a search, whether it's a filter based upon category. These are all just facets, and we can build those and group those together and use those then to filter our products, our posts, our custom post types, all manner of different things. You can also go ahead and do advanced filtering if you're using something like WooCommerce. You can see we can use logos for the brands. We've got sliders, color chips, lots of different options. I'm going to cover some of these in this video today, but this is more of a first look than going massively into detail. The thing I do like about this is it supports Jet Engine. I would expect it to support Metabox, ACF and Pods, and probably Toolset, which I believe it does. Toolset, Toolkit, whichever one it is. But Jet Engine support is really, really good to see. So that's basically what we have. You can also deal with things like create quick views, wish lists, full text search, variation swatches, and so on. So it kind of fills the gap for various different products should you want to work with WooCommerce using the Piotnet Grid. So now we've kind of seen what this includes. Let's hop over and take a look at the key features. Now, once Piotnet Grid is installed, you'll get a new entry inside your dashboard, and inside there we've got all the different options associated with the plugin. So let's open this up. First thing you're going to need to do is make sure you insert your license key and activate your account. Once you've done that, you'll have access to the entire plugin. So if we look now on the left hand side, we've got cards, grids, facet, archive templates, import and analytics. In this video, I'm only going to concentrate on cards, grids and facets because this is where you're going to spend probably most of your time, especially if you're working with something like Elementor, Oxygen, or even just using Gutenberg and the shortcodes that you have as part of Piotnet's Grid Builder. Okay, so let's take a look first of all at those cards that I mentioned. So the first thing we need to do is either import one of the demos or start by adding a new one and creating it from scratch. Let's take a look at the demos first of all to see what we have. And this is the selection of demos we've got for our cards. Nothing too exciting, but they're a starting point. And if you're unsure how to get started, or you just want a quick way of testing things out, or just go with one of these designs, you can just import that directly into your design. We're going to take a look at starting from scratch in this example though. So we're going to close that down and we're going to click on Add New. Now once you do this, you can see we can give it a name first of all. Now you can ignore the fact we've got custom fields underneath. This is just because I've got advanced custom fields installed. But let's just call this product card, and once we've done that, we're going to hit publish, and then we're going to open this up to start working inside the editor in PiotnetGrid. Okay, so let's open this up. Now, if you're used to working with any kind of page builder, this is going to feel very, very familiar. Let's take a quick look at what we have in the interface itself. The main area you can see is where you can drop the different widgets. These are just the building block elements to create the actual card that you want. On the left-hand side, you've got all the different options, all the different widgets you can use to create your cards. And if we take a look down the bottom, you can see we can switch between various different responsive modes, tablet, desktop, mobile, those kinds of things. You can also open this up to preview it. Obviously, there's nothing to see at the moment. You can go into the settings, and you can see these are your global settings, and inside there you can set a column gutter, any custom CSS or JavaScript that you want. And finally, you've got the back to the sort of WordPress dashboard, and you can save this when you're ready as well. So let's just switch back to all the different widgets, and then from there we can now start building things. So let's first of all add a section in, and this is where we can kind of contain all the different elements. So we'll just drag that onto our page, and you can see this now puts a single row column. Again, these options are very familiar to you if you use any kind of page builder. In all honesty, if you use Gutenberg and anything like cadence blocks, anything like that, a lot of these options are going to be very familiar. You can see we've got the container, we've got the overall section, and we can duplicate this, we can edit it, and we can delete it. And the same goes for any of the sections inside there and any of the widgets that we add in. So now we've created this section. Let's go ahead and set a few things up. You can see we can configure this to go between boxed and full width, depending upon the theme and design you're working with. You've also then got the ability to set your width on desktop, tablet, and mobile, and you can work in pixels, and you can just edit what you want inside there. You can also set the entire section to be a URL. And you can see anywhere you see this little lightning bolt, this is where you can reference dynamic information. So again, if you come from Elementor, you've got dynamic tags. If you're coming from Oxygen, you've got lots of dynamic information inside there. Again, depending on what plugins you've got installed, you'll see you have different information. So we've got WooCommerce installed, so you can see product title, price, those kinds of things. But you've got all the author information, custom fields from ACF, Metabox, Pods, Toolset, and Jet Engine, which is awesome to see. So let's just leave those as they are for now. You've also got other things inside you, and again, there's so many different options. It would be crazy for me to go into everything, but I'll cover the key things that I think are important as this first look. You've got advanced, and this is where we can set the normal, the hover, and the hover card effects, and you can see we've got your margin, your padding, your position, overflow, colors, typography, all those kinds of things. And we can work in pixels, percentages, ems and rems, and also set things up across all the different devices. So you should have no reason why whatever you design inside here isn't going to be great looking and work great across all those different devices. Okay, so we'll leave that as it is. Let's hop back over and let's just add in the first different widget we want. So let's grab this image. We'll drop that inside our container. We'll give that a second, and you can see now this loads a preview image in. You can upload an image if you want to inside here, or you can reference dynamic data, which obviously, because we're creating cards and we're working with WooCommerce in this example, then we're going to be using dynamic data. So we can open this up, and inside there, again, you can see tons of options. For this example, we want the featured image, but you can see we've got Metabox, Pods, fields, and so on. So any kind of image field in any of those meta field creation tools, you can reference those. Let's just use the featured image for now. This is the first thing that I would love to see implemented, because we're basically creating a template, but we have no information inserted into it to make sure that everything looks okay. We don't know what ratio our images are going to be working with, whether they're going to be portrait, landscape would look better in square, whatever you kind of want with your design. So I would love to see the ability to select a preview post, whether that's a product, whether it's a custom post type, whether it's a normal WordPress post, whatever you're working with, that we could see exactly what we're going to be working with in the same way that you can do with Oxygen, that you can do with Brizy, you can do with Elementor, all those kinds of things. So let's hopefully see that in the near future. You can then see we've got other options for switching the WooCommerce product image on hover. So if you have multiple images and you want that effect when you mouse over, it'll switch between a couple of different images. You can set that up inside you. And you can see it says to get the image from WooCommerce variation swatches if selected. Lots of options. We can set the image size. So depending upon the kind of grid that you're creating, if you have something like 3 columns, for example, you may want to have something like the medium large image. So it's a good quality image, but not massive. Helps with the load time. And then if you want to, you can set up your image aspect ratio on desktop, tablet, and mobile. And there's some information underneath on how to set that up. And again, this is where having that preview image would make this process so much easier. Next up, we've got the ability to set where we want this to link to if you want to make the image a link, which in this example makes a lot of sense. So we can just open that up, and much like other tools we've talked about, you can choose between a custom URL or just the media file itself. Custom URL makes sense in this example. It opens up the link URL. We can click on the little dynamic icon and we can say we want this to go to the post URL. Really, really straightforward stuff. Like I say, if you're used to working with tools that have dynamic data facilities built into them, like Elementor Pro and Oxygen, this is going to be really self-explanatory and pretty simple to work with. You can set your link target, any caption you want, and if you want to enable lazy load for the images. So pretty cool to see all that. Then you can hop over into the style section if you want to customize the size, you want to set a border radius, border, you want your alignment, and again, you have the option for your tablet and your mobile. If you've chosen to have captions, you can set the caption style, typography, those kinds of things. Something else that I would like to see inside Builder itself is the ability to set up global styles for all of the different elements. So for example, we have global typography, or that actually links and ties into the page builder or the theme that you're currently using. That might be a bit more difficult short term. So maybe a short-term fix would be the ability to create a global set of options for your typography, your colors, and then pull from those to be able to set things quickly. Either that, or the ability to copy and paste styles. That would also be really useful. So hopefully if the guys over at Piotnet are listening, maybe these are a couple of things that are already on your list of to-do, but hopefully these are things that you will be able to implement into things. Next, if we take a look at advanced, again, you can see we've got all those options for your normal, your hover card, all your colors, typography, and so on. You've also got the ability to use custom classes and custom IDs. You want to do some advanced CSS. It gives you information on exactly how to do that. You've got to wrap things inside the wrapper tag. Again, much the same as what we've seen with a lot of other page builders out there where you use those kind of containers to target the specific element that you want to style. And again, you've got things like for the main element, for child elements, those kinds of things. If you want to create animation effects, you've got plenty to choose from inside here, including the duration and the delay. If you need to set custom attributes, you can do that as well. You can add your attributes into this attribute list. You have conditional visibility. So you can open this up and you can set the visibility based upon the user role. Also, conditional visibility based upon URL parameters or URL contains, which is pretty advanced stuff. So you can see you want to show this based upon something or hide it, and then you can set your condition, and you can see we can base this upon custom fields, URL parameters, URL contains. So lots of different things you could do inside here, and you can stack these on top of each other to create quite comprehensive conditional lists for when certain things will show up. Again, way too much for what I want to cover in this first look video, so we'll just get rid of that, close it down, and leave all the conditional options as they are. And if you're using the grid carousel, you can see you can enable the trigger previous next action, various different things. Okay, so lots of different options inside there. Let's go back and add a few more items in. So let's just grab a text element, we'll drop that underneath there. And you can see we can just start typing in and insert manual text, or we can use the lightning bolt to pull in dynamic information. So let's grab that post title this time. And you can see what this does is it gives you a short code. And the nice thing with this is if you want to stack up multiple different short codes and you want to apply styling, you can do all of that. You can insert text into this. So if you're coming from something like Bricks or Oxygen, where you can very easily insert short codes into the body of text, you can do a very similar thing inside here with these shortcodes. Now, not to spend too much time on all this, I'll quickly go through. So let's just set this to be something like H4. We want to set this to a link URL. Well, we're going to leave the title as it is. It's not going to be a link at all. And we're going to set this to be centered. We'll pop into advanced. We'll add in a little bit of margin. And we'll say, we'll unlink these. And we're going to set 10 pixels top, 10 pixels bottom. So it gives us a bit of breathing room around things. Okay, let's go back to our widgets. This time we're going to add in something like the add to cart button. So let's just drag that underneath. There we go. Give it a second to load in. and there's our add to cart button. So now we can go ahead, we want to add icons in, we can add icons from the library. So that's pretty cool to see. We're not going to worry about that for this example. And again, you can set your normal, your hover, and all those kinds of things. So let's just change the background color on here. We'll set this to be a slightly different color. Doesn't really matter too much what I choose, because it's more just to demonstrate that you can very easily make these changes to a very ugly color. That'll do. Pretty ugly, but yeah. Typography, all those options are inside there, so we can just choose from any of your typical Google fonts. We can set up the size, we can adjust the weight. So again, this is where I'd like to see something that we can set things up to be consistent across the board without having to do this every single time on every different element. Get rid of all the border radius, and we now have a nice simple add to cart button. And we can also change this to be justified so it fills the entire width. Now obviously things are going to look a bit weird at the moment because we are literally dealing with a placeholder setup. But obviously once this actually gets put into our layout, there's going to be 3 of these stacked side by side, so it is going to be considerably smaller. It would be nice to sort of be able to set that up and see maybe a grid in action inside here as well. But let's just go into the advanced side of things. Let's just add in a little bit of margin at the bottom. So let's unlink these. We'll set something like 20 pixels. There we go. Okay, so we'll say we're happy with that. We'll hit save on there, and we've now created the basic card. Obviously, like I said, you could get much more creative over this side of things. Okay, so now we've done that, let's go back into WordPress. There's our product card. If we want to come back in and edit this at any point, we can just edit it with the PiotnetGrid. If you're using a page builder or you're using Gutenberg or something where you have to rely upon shortcodes, there's the shortcode for this particular product card. So if you want to reference that, there's the shortcode. And each of the different items inside you, the grids, cards, facets, those kinds of things, all have shortcodes associated with them. Okay, so now that we've created the card, the next thing we need to do is go ahead and create the grid that will house the cards. So we're going to go into grids this time. We're going to add new. We're going to call this product grid. We'll save this or publish it. Then we'll just open this up and edit it with PiotnetGrid. So once we do that, we're kind of dropped into exactly the same kind of look and layout as we have with the cards. The only difference being is we now have some different options in the left-hand side. We still have sections, but we also have things like grid and so on. So let's just go ahead and add the section in first of all. So we'll drop that inside there, and we've now created our container. So the next thing we're going to do is go back in, and we're going to grab the grid icon and drop that inside our container. So once we've done that, we now just need to tell it where we want to get the information from, and then we can go through various different parameters to set things up. Now at the moment, it looks terrible because it's looking at the wrong information. It's looking at the normal WordPress posts. So what we need to do is just go ahead and change that. So first of all, we've got the source, and as you can see, we can choose between posts, products, and so on, or custom post types, or we can use taxonomy terms. So if you use taxonomies like categories, tags, those kinds of things, you can reference those. The card template is where you choose the template for the actual card design. Now we've only got one, which is product card, but if you have multiple, you'd simply select them from here. And this is where it's useful to make sure that you do at least preface things or put things that say it's a card, or kind of label things to make logical sense. Product card is perfectly fine. You can then choose between things like the current query. You can enable that if you want to. Your custom query, wishlist posts. So if you're using the wishlist feature inside PiotnetGrid, you can reference that, and also use this with recently viewed posts. So you can create more comprehensive layouts and pull different grids together, or different templates, and use those in combination to create something much more complex. We'll leave this as it is though, but if you open any of these up, for example, the custom query, you'll see that now opens things up, and we can go ahead and we can create our custom query. So next thing we need to do is say where the information is coming from. So at the moment it says posts. We need to change that because we're working with products, and just select products. And there we go. There's our products now being loaded in. Still looks terrible, but we'll deal with that in a moment. Now you can go ahead and you can refine how things are displayed. So you can see post status, we can click and we can choose only published options. You can also include posts, exclude posts, include taxonomy, and also include taxonomy term relations. So you can set this up between or and. So it's the operator there. Or you can exclude taxonomy terms. So with all these options, there really should be no reason why you can't create something, a grid layout, that meets exactly your requirements. There's lots of really useful options. If you want to set an offset, you can do that inside here as well. So you might be combining multiple different grid layouts, and you want to offset one grid layout to make sure you don't have an overlap of posts or products or whatever it is you're listing. You can do that inside here. So we can set an offset, for example, of 1, and then that would offset the first post, and you can see that gets rid of the first chili is on there. So let's get rid of that. So there's other options on there, and again, there's so many options inside here. I can't cover everything, but if you want to see more detailed tutorials on this plugin, let me know in the comment section as always. If you want to add custom fields to work with filtering things, you can do that, and you can also order the list if you want to. But we can use facets to do ordering as well after the fact, so if we want to use that, we can do that. Hop into layout, and this is where we can choose the basic layout. So we're going to set this to be 3. So this will give us 3 columns, and everything already looks a lot better. You can also go ahead and enable masonry. So depending upon the style of layout that you have, you can set masonry up inside here. You can also go ahead and set up the columns on desktop, tablets, and mobile to make sure it's as responsive as you need it to be. And the same goes for the column gap and the row gap and so on. You can enable the carousel inside here. So once we enable that, you can see that it opens up more options and changes the way that everything looks. So if we want to set this up, we can say, let's have 4 inside there, and we'll say we want to scroll 4 at a time. So it's like a page at a time. You can see that's exactly how we can do it. And now we can just easily go through these one at a time. Really, really simple to set up and configure. Let's just disable that. If you want to apply card animations, you can do that inside here. You can set up any caching to speed the process up to make sure that everything is as quick as possible loading in. And if you want to, you can set a custom no results found alert on your page. You can even reference dynamic information. So if you were using an options page as part of your site design, you could reference that information inside here. Pretty cool to see. Okay, so that's the grid inserted in. So all we need to do now is simply hit save, and we've created our grid. Now, before we move on to dealing with facets, let me just show you 2 ways in which you can insert these grids now into your designs. We're going to take a look at doing it with Gutenberg, and we'll also take a look at how we can do it with Elementor. So first of all, let's just go into the pages. We're going to add new, and what we're going to do is we're just going to name this. We'll just hit publish on there. And now all we need to do is come in and find the relevant widget. So let's click on the plus, and inside there we're going to search for grid, and you can see there's our grid. We're going to simply just select that, and that now pulls in the placeholder. So the first thing we need to do is select what grid is going to be referenced inside here. Drop this down, and you can see there's our product grid. We only have one at this point in time, so we'll select that. Now, unfortunately, this is all we get to see on the back end. So this is one of those areas that I would like to see this. Well, this is a limitation with Gutenberg, I don't really know, but I would like to see this where you could actually see the end result inside your design. Because again, it's one of those things without any visual representation of what things are going to look like, it makes it a little bit more difficult to style things and set things up. But like I say, this might be a limitation with the way that Gutenberg works, or might be a limitation with how PiotnetGrid actually integrates with this. But let's just update this, and let's go ahead and preview it. And there we go. There's our, as you can see, laid out the way that we set it up. Now, obviously, it looks pretty ugly, but it shows you how it all works. You know, you can go to town on the design and the look and the feel. This is one of the beauties of working with a plugin like this. So that's how easy it is to do it inside Gutenberg. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how we can do this with Elementor. Let's add a new page in. We're going to name this. We'll save our draft, and we'll simply edit it with Elementor. Now, like we did earlier on, all we need to do is go ahead and search for grid. And you can see we've got 3 different options. We've got facet, grid, and template, which are all part of PiotnetGrid. So let's just drag the grid icon into our page layout. Let's make a bit of room for this in the way we normally would. There we go. And all we need to do now is select it and choose what grid we want to use. So there's our product grid. And inside Elementor, we do get a visual representation of exactly what this is going to look like. So a little bit easier to work inside here than it is inside Gutenberg. But, you know, it all does the same kind of thing. So let's just publish this page. And then what we can do is we can quickly take a look at previewing this. And as you can see, it looks pretty much exactly the same as the Gutenberg layout. Pretty cool. But let's be honest about it, a grid without any kind of listing or filtering options is a little bit limited. So let's go ahead, go back into PiotnetGrid and open up the facets option. Let's add new. We're going to name this, and we're simply going to hit save draft. Once done, we're going to edit this with Piotnet, and now we can go ahead and build our facets. Now, as I've said, facets are just basically ways of searching, filtering, and sorting things. But what we can do is we can group these together to create a combination of facets that interact with each other. And this is a great way of stacking all these together to create quite comprehensive and feature-rich filtering, searching, and sorting options. And we're going to touch upon the basics of how you do this, but the skills are pretty much the same as you start to expand this. So first of all, we need to add our section in. Once we've added our section in, we're going to go ahead, go back to our widgets, and from there, we're going to add in a facet. Now, once we do that, this opens up all the settings for the facet. Again, we've got settings, styles, and advanced. I'm going to ignore the styles and advanced for now because they're just there to configure the way it animates in, the way it looks, and so on. Let's just concentrate on the features. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to call this price. We're going to create a really simple price slider. So we're going to copy that name from there, and we're going to paste that into the facet label. If you want to, you can hide that label on the site. So currently it says price at the top, but we could hide that if we wanted to. Entirely up to you. We're going to put that back to where it was. Then you've got your facet action. And this is where we can choose whether this is going to be a filter, a load, or a sort kind of action. For this one, it's going to be a filter. Now, if you want to, you can also go ahead and disable the parameter inside the URL itself. Various different reasons why you might want to do that. I'll leave that as it is for now. Your placeholder, depending upon the kind of facet you've created, this is what you would see where you can see it says all. You could select that to something like select or choose your option, whatever you kind of want to do. In this example, it doesn't make any sense because we're going to change this from select to slider. And you can see that now just pulls in a slider. So now we can set the slider step number, and this is just the increments in which it's going to sort of like increase. So we're going to set this to be 1 because the prices inside our store are quite small. If you want to set a prefix or a postfix, you can do that. Slider 1000 separator, so you can configure this how you want. Your data source, we can choose between taxonomy, post date, custom field, and author. And you can also go ahead and set your taxonomy. So if you want to, you can choose where that information kind of comes from. We're going to change this and we're going to set it to be a custom field. And then you can see that opens up the custom field option underneath. And we've got a couple of examples. Now, because this is going to work from a WooCommerce price field, we're going to use this little option by here, which is underscore price. So let's just put that inside here. So underscore price. Now, I would love to see a sort of option inside here. You can click and you can find out all those different codes we could use. Because right now, we've got 2 examples. We need more, sort of a full list of exactly what can be used inside here. Specifically, if you want to reference things like WooCommerce. But if you're using various different plugins like Toolset, like ACF and so on, just tell us how we find the information out for various different things. Just give us some more information that's a little bit minimal at the moment. Okay, so now we set things up inside there. If we want to style this, we can do all that as well. But let's just hit save, and we've now created our first facet. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we can insert that facet into our design. Okay, so for this example, we're going to be using the Elementor page, but you could set this up in multiple different ways if you're not using a page builder. If you're using Gutenberg, you could create a column layout, or you could very easily use the sidebar and put widgets inside there, depending upon the theme that you're using. It's going to be a very similar process. But let's just open this up. Let's just create a new column. We'll just pull this widget over to that side, and we'll just adjust this to be a little bit smaller. We don't need it to be quite as big. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a search for facet. We're going to simply drag that into the left-hand column, and we're going to say select the facet. So we've got our product facets. That will then pull that in and show us, in this example, the price. And what grid do we want to apply this to? So we're going to open this up and say product grid. Now, unfortunately, at the moment, inside Elementor, it's not actually showing us the little slider, but take my word for it, it is there. So we'll update and save the page, and we'll just go ahead and preview things. And once that loads in, you can see there's our facet on the left-hand side, and we've got our price, our slider, and our values underneath. So now we can just simply drag this over whichever direction we want, and you can see that now updates the filter. We can do the same thing on the right-hand side. So now we can just have a pricing structure, and you can see everything is updated in real time pretty much. Pretty quick and easy to deal with. So we've added in one facet. Let's go back and add in some more. Okay, so we've got our first facet inserted, and these are grouped together like I said earlier. So let's take a look at adding some more in. Let's go ahead and add another one in. Let's add a new facet. We'll drop that underneath. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this one, and we're going to say category. We'll copy that from there and drop the label in underneath. What we can do now is we can say filter is perfectly fine. We're going to just open up the placeholder and go into filter type, and we're going to set this to be checkboxes so we can have multiple different categories to be chosen. Now, if we want to go ahead and configure this, we can do exactly that. So you can see we can choose to show or hide the choice count. Up to you which way you want to do this, and you can also set things to be inline if you want them to be horizontal. Give it a second or two to update. Okay, it's not going to update, don't worry about it. It just go into inline lists. Then you've got your filter data source. So you can choose whether this is a taxonomy, a post date, custom field, or author. We're going to choose taxonomy. We're going to select this, and we're going to come down until we find the option for product categories. And then you can use your filter logic. And this is basically how these are going to interact with each other. So or is perfectly fine, but you might want to stack these and say and. We'll hit save on there. And now all we need to do is go back to our page because we've inserted the facet widget inside our design, or a shortcode if we're using Gutenberg. We don't need to keep going back and updating anything. Once we make a change inside here, inside the facet sort of template itself, that will reflect everywhere on the site. So now if we take a look at the end result, you can see we've got our categories. Click on groceries, and that will filter now just to show all the groceries. However, let's just uncheck that. And you'll find that when we use this price slider, so let's just adjust this a little, you can see that also updates the count of products sitting inside any of those categories based upon that first slider. So now we can see that between £15 and £24, we've only got 3 groceries and 1 juice item. If we choose juice, that will filter now and only show us the juice that sits inside that price, inside that category. So really easy to start building these facets up. So that's my first look and my overview of how to use PiotnetGrid. Is this something that you would consider investing your time and money into? I know for me, I've done exactly that. I've spent the time going through, taking a look at how it all works, and invested my own hard-earned cash into it. This hasn't been gifted to me. I've paid for this out of my own pocket. So everything I'm going to tell you is my own opinion. Okay, so I personally think if you don't have a need for this right now and you don't have the spare money, maybe wait for it to mature a little bit longer. But if you do have a use for this kind of thing right now, for facets, for searches, for sorters, for creating your own layouts, and you want something that doesn't rely specifically on Elementor or Oxygen or Gutenberg or anything like that, this is a good option for not a lot of money. That lifetime deal works out around about between $80 and $90, I believe, with the discounts. And that gives you 100 sites lifetime. So I think that's a pretty good deal personally. But you let me know your comments and feedback in the description below. Yes, it's still a little bit rough around the edges. Yes, there's still room for improvement, but this is still only version 1. And they have released 2 updates on this today while I've been working through this actual tutorial video. Anyway, let me have your comments, questions, and feedback in the comment section below. All the applicable links are in the description. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts, and until next time, take care. And if you'd like to see more videos covering a little bit more nuanced kind of overview of how to get started with Grid Builder, I don't know where I'm going with this. Anyway.